Hello, and welcome to the Canyons Are Calling podcast. I'm Cheryl Jocelyn, your host for the show. Happy December. I can't believe it's already the end of the year. Happy holidays to everyone, no matter how you celebrate. First off, I want to thank my Patreons. You guys are awesome. I would not be able to continue this show without your support, so I really appreciate it. If you feel like these episodes are valuable to you and you appreciate my time and my energy to create this content, you can also help me out by donating to my Patreon. It is patreon.com/the canyons are calling. And with that, you get a canyon call every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month. And then also it's the only place where I post who I'm going to be interviewing. So you have the opportunity to ask them questions, which may or may not be a good benefit. I don't know. And also I will send you a beer glass or a sticker depending on what tier you decide to join in on. You can donate anywhere from $2 up to $20 a month, or you can just make a one-time donation. I also accept PayPal. It's thecanyonsarecalling.com. and Venmo, which is Cheryl's Rocks, ROX, and I will have links to those all in the show notes. Also, I do have my website up and going. It has the beer glasses and stickers and some dog tag toys and rope ends and things like that. So if you would like to support the show in that way, that's also awesome. If you have an idea for the show or a guest that you would like to have on, please reach out to me at thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. And I will get you on here, tell your story. That's how most of these episodes have happened. I don't think I would have had near as many interviews as I have had because of people that have reached out to me. So please reach out. We'll get you or whoever you suggest on the show. Sometimes it takes a little while to get people on the show, but I do work on it and I listen to all my emails. So please reach out. It also just warms my heart when you just say hello and that you listen. Enough about me rambling. Today I have on Derek Wolfe. Derek first came out with the Moab Canyoneering book several years ago, and he just recently came out with a North Wash Canyoneering book. And because of my love for North Wash, I decided that I wanted to get him on the show to talk about his books. And so we talk not only about his books, we talk about climbing and caving and canyoneering and all sorts of outdoor fun. So enjoy my interview with Derek. So today I am here with Derek Wolfe, and Derek is the author of the Moab Canyoneering book, and he also just came out with a North Wash Canyoneering book. And then Tom also mentioned to me that you, before canyoneering, were a climber and have some different climbing books as well. Is that right?
That's correct. Mostly peak bagging oriented for mountains in Colorado. I think I have 4 books out, maybe a 5th coming soon for that. Those include various hiking guides for the mountain ranges here in Colorado, such as the Elk Range, the Sangre de Cristo Range, the Front Range, and then the 10 Mile Mosquito Range. So, yeah, primarily come from a caving and climbing background.
Very awesome. So where did you grow up and how did you get into the outdoors?
So I grew up in Colorado and currently live in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. I got into the outdoors basically through the Boy Scouts, and it all basically began with caving. We did a family vacation to Carlsbad, and I was really enamored with the caves there. And then I think a week after I got back from that family trip, we had a Boy Scout wild caving trip, and that's how I got hooked into caving and primarily did caving. And then recreational caving was fun, but I wanted to get more into the exploration. And during learning how to get more into the exploration, I noticed I went with a caver, Jim Erickson, who's a extremely famous climber as well here in Colorado. Did a lot of the first ascents in El Dorado Canyon. Was really bold. Anyways, I ended up somehow doing a caving trip with him, and I saw him climb in the cave and was like, wow, he was really good at climbing and could get places in the cave that wasn't normally accessible. So that's how I kind of got into climbing, was to better caving. So I ended up getting involved with climbing outside, and then of course that helped improve the caving, and then through climbing, mountaineering and peak bagging through that. So it was just kind of a evolved process from there. And then I guess the canyoneering started, I guess, in 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. I was involved with starting to get into the desert climbing, Indian Creek in the Moab area. And then kind of as a side activity and for hiking, we ended up doing some canyons, and that's how I ended up getting hooked in the canyoneering. It was kind of a rest day thing, but that evolved into more of a passion for not just rest day, but having canyoneering trips as well.
So how did you get into writing books about your explorations?
So it all basically started with kind of the peak bagging when I was doing a lot of the peaks here in Colorado. Was focusing a lot more. Obviously, they have a lot of the 14ers are the popular thing, but I ended up working through that list and then moved on to the Colorado 13er list, which includes a list of over 600 summits. And there wasn't a whole lot of documentation on any of the routes or the mountains there. And I just ended up climbing a lot of those peaks, and do that. Ended up writing trip reports, kind of documenting the trips on the peaks. And then, just over several years of doing that, it didn't really end up anticipating on writing a book, but then had a collection of all the writings and beta, and then had a community of friends and was able to pull from their beta and the different routes. And then ended up focusing on writing the Front Range 13ers guidebook, but that was going to be a larger project, so I started with a smaller project, which ended up being my first book, which was the Moab Canyoneering book. And again, that was kind of taken from after days of climbing in the Moab area, Fisher Towers and Indian Creek, and then collecting the beta, and then ended up writing like that smaller book to help kind of do everything, because I did a lot of the formatting and maps all separate of the publisher there, and those were published through Sharpened. So it gave me like kind of the learning how to use InDesign and the maps. I was already pretty efficient in Illustrator from doing a lot of cave cartography, but that's how it ended up writing the books. It was just kind of trying to get a collection of all the beta before the internet was really wide open with a lot of that information, so readily accessible.
Awesome.
And then, yeah,
I've used the Moab book a couple of times that I've been to Moab. It's been very helpful. And then I just like thumbing through it and looking at the pictures and reading about the canyons.
Right. Yeah.
So I was super excited when you came out with the North Wash book, because I love North Wash area.
Right. And it was you kind of doing from the peak bagger list of ticking all the peaks in a certain list, like accomplishing the 13ers. I've kind of taken that mentality a little bit toward canyoneering. So it's, I try to tick all the, even maybe not the so good canyons, just as a habit. And then of course documenting those. So that's kind of how you get like that larger collection of all the canyons, from like the classics to maybe the ones that maybe don't want to do or do.
Right. Sometimes those ones are good just to escape the crowds of people that are in the traditional ones.
And yeah, no, I enjoy all the canyons.
Yeah.
And they get a little more exploratory because maybe the beta is not as good or as well documented, and there's always sometimes a surprise, which makes it exciting. That is kind of the drive for that. The same thing with like going back to caving was like the exploration drive. So going and doing all the canyons and trying to explore all of them. It's that drive to exploration.
Yeah. So how many caves have you done in Colorado area?
Caves. So caving is unlike canyoneering. I take more of like a project mentality for the exploration. So I usually pick like a longer cave and systematically work a singular cave. Do a lot of caving in South Dakota, New Mexico, Colorado, and then I got to have a few survey projects in Tennessee. I mainly focus on caving in South Dakota because it has the highest exploration value in terms of finding Virgin Cave, and that's primarily in Jewel Cave, which is the national monument, and then Wind Cave, and participate in a lot of the camps there. And for reference, Jewel, I believe, is now over 210 miles long, and then Wind is getting close to 160 miles long.
Wow.
So it's a lot of trips and exploration. They keep going, and it's always fun to find new Virgin Cave. Each one's got their pluses and minuses, and then Fort Stanton in New Mexico has great exploration. That probably has some of the best exploration potential in terms of like large, well-decorated Virgin Cave. But land issues with private property and things like that. Management with the BLM makes that, and flooding, because cave has a tendency to flood, which can slow down exploration for years at a time. So, and of course, that one's also really decorated, so the conservation aspect of doing that makes it difficult.
Yeah, I have yet
And
to
then,
do actual real caving, but I have friends that do it, and it's intriguing. I'm a little
yeah, it's fun.
claustrophobic, but it's intriguing
You
for
know,
sure.
it's a lot of fun. It's kind of, there's some parallels between caving and climbing, or canyoneering. I mean, in terms of like the stemming and sometimes the squeezes, and then definitely like the vertical aspect. Although like canyoneering, rope work is a little not as good in terms of anchor, because it's a little more creative, obviously, in the canyoneering environment. Whereas like caving, it's a little bit more rugged and rigid, and of course you're sending a lot of the ropes too. Whereas like canyoneering, it's a lot more pull down instead of having to climb back up.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't necessarily like jug on a sand trap going up type
A caver
scenario.
friend asked me if that was a possibility, and it scared the crap out of me. I was like, "Hey Tom, is this like, what do you think?" And he's like, "Well, I would maybe use 2 sand traps to make sure you really fill them a lot, and then like put a why can't I call it, a safety on it to make sure it's not gonna fall down." And I was like, "I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
That makes me super worried."
I wouldn't want to jug on a sand trap, but
No.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and then a little bit of caving in Utah as well. But and then Colorado, it's the caving in Colorado isn't generally stellar. I mean, there's a little bit of exploration potential. It's usually tight and cold and not as good in terms of finding long caves, which is kind of what I'm after. It's like long going caves that kind of hopefully never end. So
One day. So back to the canyons and the North Wash book. What are some of your favorite canyons in the North Wash area?
the North Wash area, obviously, like the leprechauns are fun. I really enjoyed Redemption because it's scenic, and then you get a little bit of the slog fest, but it's a pretty slog. And then obviously, like the sportiness of Samthrex is always fun. So those are some of my favorites. But like I said, easier ones are just as good. Hogwarts is obviously really good for a couple hours or whatever. You can't beat the bang for the buck on that. Canyon.
Yeah. The last time we went, I was like, we're not doing Hogwarts this time. But a couple
Right.
people in the group hadn't done it yet. So we ended up doing it. And halfway through, I was like, I don't know why I have such a bad taste for this canyon. It's so beautiful. Like, yeah, it's awesome. Do you like the really tight, squeezy canyons?
I don't, and that's probably from caving, because in caving, like tight squeezes, it's work, and it's not like fun. So that's kind of how it gets to in at least in the canyoneering side. You're like, oh, and that's just like a lot of squeezing. I mean, they're fun here and there, but I wouldn't want to exclusively go for the tight ones all the time.
I also agree they are a lot of work. They're just
A lot of
physically
work.
demanding. How about Moab? What are some of your favorites there?
Obviously, SGR I really enjoyed. Let's see here. Pool Arch is obviously really good. The canyons there tend to get a little busy because of the guiding, but that's a good and bad thing, I think, to introduce that. But those are probably some of my favorites, at least in the Moab area.
What's it been to watch that area grow and change so much over the years that you've been canyoneering?
It's actually changed quite a bit, because I remember we were doing some of the first, uh, doing those. It wasn't as popular when they were guided, and now it's hard to do some of like the real classics like Medieval Chamber without running at least into a couple groups or guided groups or things like that. And then of course, like the increase in traffic and the uses on the BLM. When I was climbing there in the 2000s, it was a lot easier to get a camping spot really close to town. Now it just, with the explosion of outdoor recreation growth there in terms of mountain biking, hiking, and the tourists, it's pretty crazy to see how much that's changed in the last 15 years. It'll be interesting to see how that area and the other areas, even like the North Wash, what they might look like in 5 or 10 years too. And that's kind of maybe one of the reasons for writing like a book, is to try to like standardize and minimize or point out impacts that help minimize that use issues that might help. Like work with Arches National Park on a lot of their stuff that was they wanted to try to how to minimize and stick with standardized trails and things like that instead of having like 5 different beta sources saying to take all these different ways. Obviously that's increased impact, a lot more social trailing, which was obviously a concern. It's kind of, I guess, a concern that you could see all over as the sport grows and that outdoor recreation grows.
Yeah, I feel like that's happening everywhere. The trails are just people wandering to viewpoints or just wandering off trail so much, and then so many more people just following those footsteps. Yeah, I've noticed a huge impact in Zion and Kanab area for sure.
Yeah, and like rope grooving, obviously I've seen, like, having run canyons over the years, it's kind of amazing to see like how rope grooving's increased and gotten worse over the years.
And what type of things do you think that we could do to help mitigate those types of things?
So obviously, like, using the toggle devices like fiddlesticks when appropriate are good. I think being aware of like extending the webbing anchors if one's not comfortable using their toggle device is obviously real important. It's hard to have a lot of people try to get educated in that because, like climbing, I remember I was probably guilty of some rope grooving when I started out, just coming from a climbing background and doing double rope rappels and maybe not being as conscious as I should have been on anchor placements and things like that, but obviously learned and, just trying to help foster going forward on that. Pulling the rope from far back from the lip. I think breaking up like multiple stage rappels into several rappels might be one, because like you can see a lot of rope grooving even in walls start to develop, which is kind of disappointing in some ways.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more time consuming to have to do 2 or 3 rappels versus one long one. So, those are all things to consider.
Yeah, for sure. They're breaking up a lot of the rappels here in Zion too because of rope grooves.
Yeah. So, that's part of just maybe the downside of the popularity of the sport is obviously sandstone soft, so it's going to take a lot of abuse, unfortunately.
Anchor placement too, I think, helps out with that. If you notice rope grooves moving, forming and then moving the anchor a little bit, just slightly, could help with that. And like you also said with the courtesy anchors, a lot of people still don't know how to use those correctly, and so like really only the last person has to go with the soft start over the edge, and everybody else can just rappel regularly, and then doing a soft start and then stepping back way far to pull the rope using a pull cord or a fiddle stick. Yeah, those are all great things.
Yeah. So hopefully, education can get out there on that and impacts can be minimized. Because obviously, like higher impacts, I don't think can result to good things such as like permitting or whatever might happen from that as well.
Yeah, it would be weird to have North Wash permitted, I think.
Right. You never know with like camping or big camping, I could see that in 5 years, 10 years.
I do know there was once talk of shutting down the Sandthrax campground, and then they stepped in and put in the fire rings and tried to encourage everybody to drive down to the restroom at Hogs. And yeah, if we can all just respect that or bring your own way to eliminate waste is awesome.
Yeah, I think the wag bags might be like a good thing. I'm obviously well practiced in that from like doing the multi-day camps,
right?
Caving, carrying all the waste out, and it's really not that bad. And there's like the burrito bags that we make are pretty bomb proof. Obviously because of tight squeezing and things like that. So and eliminate odors. That's really not that bad. So I'd maybe encourage the use of that. Because if everybody started going out there and every cat hole around every bush,
right?
It's obviously.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why they were gonna close down the camp at one point, and then like people were just being more aware of like the human waste issue, and so hopefully moving forward that does not remain a problem. What specific brand do you like to use for the wag bags?
So I actually make my own out of gallon freezer Ziplocs, and I usually like use 2 or 3.
Wow.
And what I end up doing is I put a little bit of baking soda in the bottom to help neutralize the smell, and then like dry it up. Then I use like I use like nitrile gloves, those like latex gloves that I have in there. And so after using like the first bag, I'll wrap the gloves over the burrito bag and then wrap that up, because then if like that avoids like puncturing, you can like step on it and it expands the latex and not necessarily bust the bag. And then
Wow.
wrap that in another gallon Ziploc. So it's like not only does that like help it make it a little bit more durable and bust resistance, but then it also makes it a little easier for that use there. And
Interesting.
it's really cheap.
Right.
What is a couple gallon of baking soda?
Right. That's awesome. I'll have to try that. I just been using the rest stops because that's what Tom sells online. But
Right, yeah.
Says.
So
they work well.
wow.
Anyway, moving along, are there any canyons that you would like absolutely not ever do again?
Not do again. I don't know if there's one I wouldn't do again. I mean, obviously, I would prefer not to do certain ones, but I'll probably repeat any canyon.
Yeah.
A
day's out is always a good day out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A bad day at work. So, what brings you out into the wilderness or out into the canyons?
The exploration, and then obviously, like the team aspect is another aspect that makes canyoneering fun. Is going with a group of people or like teaching. Or just like the whole teamwork aspect of down climbs, checking anchors, rappelling, having good times with friends, things like that. It's absolutely what drives it. And of course, the scenery and the technicality and the problem solving is a big aspect to it as well. That makes it fun for everybody.
Do you see yourself writing any more different guidebooks or updating the Moab one?
There'll probably be a second edition Moab book that will probably include, I think, maybe 10 more canyons. So it's fairly good increase in canyons there. They'll also have updated the maps, because I've got a little better with the maps, having learned GIS and things like that. And then obviously some of the names have changed. And then maybe just highlight a little bit more of the conservation and issues there to make sure those are highlighted on that. But that's probably about maybe 2 years down the line for the Moab book. And then for the mountain peak bagging guide, I'm working on updating my 13er range, which only included the 13ers, which would include the 14ers as well.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, and then I'm working on trying to get the maps available that are geo-referenced that work real well in like apps like Avenza on the phone, so you can download it via QR code, which is something I included in the Hanksville book. So it's like real time on your phone. You can just follow the exact map that's in the book. If you're doing whatever canyon color it is on the line, you can stay on the line or whatever there.
Awesome.
And things like that will be included in an updated version.
Yeah, that's a really neat feature that the Moab book has, or the Northwatch book has, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I had a friend that kind of pointed that out to me, and having used it a little bit more, I'm definitely hooked on using that over like a GPS or like the other phone stuff. It's the maps that I can generate, which has the satellite topo and everything else, which is really nice.
Well, cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about canyoneering or your books?
Oh, no. I mean, just make sure, try to approach with that conservation mindset. Try to have fun. Obviously, even like sometimes I can get in the trap of like being complacent, even being experienced, just make sure to check everything and approaching everything, with a safe mindset and not get complacent. So that's one thing I would maybe say about that in terms of canyoneering.
Yeah, I like that you point that out. I ran into like a kid in the canyon one time, and his dad was like, "Wait till I can get down there and check you out." And I was like, "I can check him out if you want." And he was like, "It's okay. I don't need to be checked." And I was like, "No, we all check each other. Like, even though we've been doing this for over 10 years, like we still check each other out, and it's always good to have somebody check you." And just like remind the kids like, "Yeah, you're learning stuff, but it's okay to be checked."
I mean, I've messed up even recently. It's good to have people check on me. I come from an aviation background where like everybody's double checking everybody anyways with like a call and response. Like even with climbing, it's you're always checking your partner's knot and things like that. So it's definitely good to transfer those habits into canyoneering or anything in general, really, that is safety related.
Yep, for sure. Sport can get dangerous very fast.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be,
No,
right?
no, not at all.
Not an extreme sport unless you make it one, which it definitely shouldn't be.
Yep, exactly. Complacency is not awesome.
No, no.
Anyway, I know canyoneering makes me kind of hungry. What is your favorite in canyon snack?
I usually go with like the almond biscuit bars and goos. I eat a lot of goos. That probably comes from just habits of like a lot of peak bagging and mountaineering aspect. I eat a lot of goos. Probably goos.
What's your favorite kind of goo?
I like the salted caramel.
Ooh, that does sound good. I like the strawberry
Um,
so far, but I should try the caramel.
yeah, salted caramel. I don't. I actually like the ones with the caffeine. So
Mm,
I think birthday cake is one that I don't like because it doesn't have caffeine and it doesn't taste very well either.
sounds really sweet.
Yeah, it's just like eating a frosting, right in goo form.
Mm. Sugar rush. How about your favorite after canyon beverage?
Genesee beer, the cheap beer. So that's probably my favorite after canning beer. Yeah.
Nice. Is there
Yeah.
an essential piece of gear that you always carry with you?
Essential piece of gear. I don't know if I have a specific uh, set of gear. I mean, obviously, I try to bring everything that would be needed or adequate. So, I don't know, harness, rope, a sense of adventure, things like that. Probably actually thinking about my essential piece of gear would be my vehicle. I think that's the essential piece of gear. 'Cause without it, I couldn't do anything, right?
Right. Starting canyoneering, I drove a Honda Civic, and trying to get it to some of the trailheads did not work out in my favor. So I quickly
No, yeah,
upgraded to a four-wheel drive.
yeah. I'm currently getting a new rear differential in my Xterra.
I love my
But
Xterra.
so
Good luck with that.
yes,
I feel like they're very trusty cars. Like I feel like they're a little underrated in the four-wheel drive.
they're very underrated, and I'm very disappointed they're not making them anymore. Because I'm not sure what I'm going to do
Yeah.
when mine gets too high on the mileage. Unfortunately.
Mine's pushing to 25 right now. She just keeps
Oh,
going.
well, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah. But yeah, I was talking to my mechanic about it, and he was like, they're just as good as Toyotas, and they get the same gas mileage. I don't know why Toyota drivers lie about their gas mileage. So that was good to hear.
Right, and they're twice as expensive to buy as well, right?
Exactly. So
So
I'll just keep pushing little dank tank around. She
exactly.
gets me to
Yep.
some cool places. Good luck with yours because they're awesome.
Oh yeah.
If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
I'd probably go to the Wadi Rum in Jordan for the climbing. I think my number one passion is probably desert climbing and desert tower climbing. I think the sense of adventure and exploration for desert climbing is extremely high there. So that would be a reason to go to the Wadi Rum. And there's probably even potential canyons there, it looks like, as well. So you get a little bit of everything there.
Ooh, that'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be worth checking out. I only asked that question so I can expand my list of places. So
Yeah, then probably Peru for mountaineering, and then I'm not sure for caving. I bet there's probably a lot of excellent caving in China. That would probably be interesting, but again, the politics and all that. And the caving's actually really good in South Dakota. So in terms of exploration.
awesome. I don't know if you know Jake Huddleston. He went to the Himalayas and did some canyoneering exploration in the Himalayas.
Oh, I
That
didn't hear about
looks
that.
incredible. Yeah.
No, that would be good. Yeah, no, I guess for canyoneering, I think I'd probably focus on New Zealand, and it actually looks like Taiwan has some pretty interesting canyoneering as well.
Yeah.
Which
I
would
interviewed a girl from Taiwan that has done a bunch of explorations out there.
so.
Jasmine, it looks amazing out there.
I mean, the wet canyons here in Colorado are a lot of fun, and then it seems like it's really amped up there, and then the jungle and everything else.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. New Zealand's also high on my list, but I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so I'd have to do like
Oh, there you go,
the
the
Lord of
Hobbit
the
town.
Rings and canyoneering at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be fun. Anyway, do you have any safety advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we say goodbye?
I think obviously like the complacents and check your partners, and just if somebody says something, like take it as a positive, and not necessarily like ego hit or anything like that, because everything. And then yeah, and bring a helmet. Definitely bring a helmet. I just ended up getting was climbing and got another. I've gone through my second helmet now from an accident. So wear your helmets. So it's
Ooh, what
important.
happened when you were climbing?
I was aid climbing in the fissures, and I was pit a cam and some suspect rock, and then it looked okay. I looked at it and backed it up the piece, and then weighted it and was looking for my next piece on the aid climb, and the block just came out and hit me in the head. And then, I mean, if I wasn't wearing a helmet, that would have been real bad. But I mean, it did a pretty good dent on the styrofoam, and it's maybe a little bigger than a shoebox size block. So I mean, it wasn't any. I'm glad it only fell only 6 inches, but still.
Yeah.
And then I had a lead climbing accident, and this is probably 12 years ago in El Dorado Canyon. I took a ground fall and hit my head pretty hard. And I'm really glad I was wearing a helmet there, because I don't think I'd be walking without it. So
Wow.
definitely bring a helmet.
Yeah, that's impressionable. I have a lot of climber friends that don't wear helmets, and I'm always like, why? Why don't you wear a helmet? And they're like, I
Yeah, I
always
mean,
wear it
just
when I'm canyoneering, but not when I'm climbing because I'm not sure. And I'm like, but I mean, we don't wear it. There's, rock fall, you fall, something jumps over, makes something fall. There's other reasons to wear your helmet.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of good reasons to wear a helmet. So
Yeah.
That's probably a safety device I don't leave without as well, or like a piece of gear would be a helmet.
Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
All right.
Appreciate your invite and letting me talk. And
yeah, where can people find you and your book?
you can find them on xanadumountainpress.com. So that has a link to all my books and the Inksville guide, and then it's also got I'm slowly building an online guide between projects that is accessible. So I'm starting to get stuff from the Roost as well as I get my notes kind of digitalized and mapped up. So there'll be hopefully another resource online as well.
Awesome. Do you see yourself writing a guidebook for those areas?
No, I think it's hard. As much as I like actually doing the formatting and the illustrating and the map work for the books, it's just with the internet and everything, it's hard to justify doing print runs.
Yeah.
And the distribution is real tricky for like independent publishers as well.
Okay, so just an online resource for those areas.
Yeah, exactly. Because I take notes of everything anyway, so it's just a way to visualize my notes, maps, and everything. Hopefully, make it, again, trying to minimize impacts and routes and everything.
Nice. They can also get the Moab and the Hanksville book from Canyoneering USA, and then I can include a Canyons Are Calling sticker.
Oh, excellent.
Anyway. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. The Canyons Are Calling.
Yep.
We should probably go. Okay, that concludes my interview with Derek. I hope you enjoyed it. It makes me really want to get into caving. It sounds awesome. I have friends that do it, and I really want to get into it one of these days. I'm just a little claustrophobic. Anyway, if you would like one of Derek's books, you can check that out at Xanadu Mountain Press. Is XANADU mountainpress.com. You can also order the Northwash and the Moab Canyoneering books from Canyoneering USA. And if you mention that you heard this on the podcast, I will throw in a Canyons Are Calling sticker for you. So head on over, get yourself an adventure book and a sticker. Also, if you need a way to stay warm this winter, Rumple Blankets has your back. They have this cute little clip thing, so it makes it like a cape. They're super comfy, and I love mine for camping adventures. I also have a stash mat for when we're just having a picnic, land on the ground and just relax out there. They also have super soft Serpa fleece for when you're just cozying up on the couch and want to have a blanket around you this time of year. So if you check out the Rumple link in the show notes, I'll get a little kickback out of there if you order from there. So check those out and stay warm this winter. Also, if you have an idea for the show, don't hesitate to reach out, thecanyonsarecalling@gmail.com. I really appreciate just saying hello, hearing that you listen to the show, and any ideas for guests. So please reach out there. If you're enjoying this beautiful music in the background, shout out to Z the Handpan Man. You can find him at zthehandpanman.com or wherever you listen to music, Spotify, Apple, all those places. Also, the little introduction in the beginning was written by Tig Booth. Shout out to him, and thank you very much for writing that little jingle for us. And to little Ashes and Connor, who do this Canyons Are Calling part. I loved my little grandkids so much. Anyway, the Canyons are calling. We should probably go.